Hello, welcome to the 2021 NELMCC Bailiff Training Tutorial. My name is Alejandra Mihich, and myself and Madison Roberts are the Vice Chairs for the Bailiff Committee this year, and we ask that you kindly complete the following tutorial in its entirety to prepare for the competition. If there are any questions, please feel free to contact Madison or myself, and I will include our emails at the end of the tutorial. Thank you very much. The 2021 NELMCC presents a new unprecedented challenge of hosting the competition remotely. That makes this year an extraordinary opportunity to demonstrate our commitment at pace to hosting with diligence and consideration for all competitors and visitors. This tutorial will review the bailiff role as modified by 2021 protocol. We will begin by first reviewing the controls to Zoom rooms and how you, as a bailiff, will go about creating and managing your own competition room. Before the competition, you must practice creating Zoom rooms and controlling the functions of these rooms so that you are prepared on the day of the competition. The Zoom room for the competition will be created and sent for approval by a date at which we will announce shortly. Step 1, scheduling your Zoom meeting. There are many ways to schedule a meeting, including the Zoom web portal, through the Zoom client, or with one of our extensions or plugins. Here are some basic instructions for scheduling your first meeting. So first, sign into your Zoom web portal, which I have already done here. You can see that this is my icon in the corner. Click Meetings. Once you're in Meetings, you will move to this little plus icon here to schedule a meeting, and click Schedule Meeting. So as you'll see here, you'll have a pop-up window come up and the topic of the meeting. I'm just going to leave it as is, Alejandra Mihich's Zoom meeting, but we will give you the room number on the day of, which will be the topic header. So first, choose the date and time for your meeting. So I will have mine set to today's date for 2:30 p.m. and the duration of my meeting will be 2 hours long. Again, we will give you the exact time to make your meeting for. You must also choose the following settings so they appear in blue. You want to have the waiting room selected. Your host video should be on. The participants' video should be on. Audio, telephone and computer audio. And then proceed to advanced options and select the following. Mute participants upon entry. Automatically record meeting in the cloud. And you will add the alternative hosts as myself and Madison Roberts. So I will type in Madison's email for now because I don't believe I can add myself as a alternative host when I am already the host. But just to show you, Madison will come up here. I'll select her as my alternative host. You can also add Annie Olson as an alternative host. And Inga Caldwell. For the purposes of this video, I actually am not going to have Annie as a alternative host because she will be helping with demonstrations throughout the tutorial. And make sure that before you do anything further, you save your changes. Step 2 is getting your Zoom room approved by Madison and myself. And so how you will do this is go to your home page and you'll see here my meeting, and I will click on the ellipses to copy the invitation. You can also achieve this by going to your meetings and copying the invitation through the meeting here. And once it's copied, go to your Outlook, paste the invitation into a new email, and have myself and Madison in the email. My email is amihc@law.pace.edu, and Madison's is mroberts4@law.pace.edu, and then hit send. So now that you're starting your first meeting, you will click Start Meeting and see that you have participants in the waiting room. And so first I will admit Madison into the waiting room. And Madison is going to be representing the co-host. So as you see, when she entered the room, she was automatically muted. So Madison, if you can unmute yourself. And yeah, here's Madison. Remind the chief judge or judges as they enter that they are automatically muted and they can unmute themselves. So in order to make Madison a co-host, I will open my participants and click More over Madison. And you see here that you can make her a co-host. Yes. You will need to be confident in managing your participants to show and hide their video. You will also have to remind participants that when they are not speaking, they should hide self-view. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to admit all. And these are the remaining people in the waiting room, or you can admit individually, and this is what you should do during the competition, to go and admit team by team. So I will admit Rachel and admit Annie. Okay, so as you see, Rachel and Annie were admitted into the room and they were admitted on mute. And what we will do now is, if I wanted to rename a participant, because as you know, we are not supposed to be disclosing any school name. So I will go to the participant that I need to rename and hit More and go to Rename. And I can make Rachel Team 1 Speaker 1. And now she'll automatically be viewed as. Another function of managing your participants is if your participant accidentally leaves their video on, and although we have stressed that they should turn their video off by themselves, sometimes you will have to do it for them. Unfortunately, what this means is the participant will not be able to start up their own video again, and you will have to allow them to ask to start their video. This should not happen, as participants have been told and reaffirmed on how important it is to turn their own video off when not speaking, but in a worst case scenario situation, you now know how to turn off a participant's video. So another feature of managing your participants is if a speaker has left themselves without the mute function, you can hover over their screen and mute them by yourself, and they will be able to unmute themselves to speak again without any extra permission, like so. After all participants have finished arguments and you have adjourned the session, you will have to move the competitors back into the waiting room while the judges deliberate. In order to do this, you open your participants and hover over the members that need to be moved. You will click on More and put in waiting room. And you can do that for each participant that needs to go into the waiting room. And once you have received the go-ahead from the chief judge, all right, you can then readmit the participants to hear the judge's critiques. Hello and welcome to part 2 of the bailiff duties. This second part of the tutorial will review your duties outside of Zoom controls. You'll see here that if you have any questions, you can email myself or Madison at the 2 emails written down there. And here we go. So before the competition, and once you've set up your Zoom rooms, please be sure to email Madison and myself the Zoom room link. This is important so that Madison and I can copy the Zoom room information to put into a spreadsheet, which will be available to all bailiffs. Be sure to have all of the correct settings and times before sending your Zoom link. Before the competition, you will also print out time cards of 10, 5, 3, 1, 0, and conclude. Make sure that they are in the largest font possible, and if possible, to be in the middle of your page. An example of what time cards should look like. I printed them out here. My 10. I have a 5. 3. 1. 0. And conclude. You'll also need to confirm that the timer you will be using during your rounds is approved for use. You can do this by sending an email to Madison and myself. You will also have to show your timer on the day of the competition for approval as well. So the competition day pre-round duties, make sure to check in to the bailiff's room 45 minutes before the round begins. We will be emailing out the appropriate bailiff Zoom room credentials, and make sure to have this available to you because you will have to check out again after the round ends. Once you've entered the Zoom room for check-in, show Madison and myself that you have printed out the time card templates, bailiff checklist, bailiff information sheet, show us your timer via a screenshot, or if you're using your approved device, please show that as well. Once you have checked in, exit the room and join your previously scheduled Zoom meeting at least 15 minutes before the start time. Once you've entered your Zoom room, you should check the bailiff master sheet for the Zoom ID and password. The Zoom ID and password should match what you have in your meeting settings, and this is the information that you emailed to Madison and myself when you first set up the Zoom room. If there is any sort of conflict, please email Madison and myself immediately. Once you've confirmed that your Zoom ID and password are correct, make sure to organize your area. Make sure that you're situated with the plain background behind you, and be ready to admit the judges. Be ready to admit the judges upon their arrival. This gives you some time to network and get to know the judges a bit better before the round begins. Once the chief judge has entered the room, you should begin to make them a co-host of the Zoom room. Once the chief judge is made the co-host and you have received approval from the judges, you may begin admitting the teams. Please do so by team. This is so that you can fill out your bailiff timesheet. Please remember to fill out the bailiff timesheet by writing down the first oralist's name and the time they will be arguing for, and repeat this for the second oralist, and ask them how much time they are saving for rebuttal. Please remind teams to request rebuttal time when speaking to judges. After you have finished writing down the credentials for the first team, you can proceed by admitting the next team into the room and repeat the previous steps until you have admitted all three teams and have all of the information written down. Your bailiff timesheet will look like this, and you will fill out the information correspondingly. Before the round begins, you will read out the introduction to the room. We've included the introduction in your package labeled Intro to Room. Please be sure to read the introduction word for word, as there is important information contained in the introduction that needs to be announced. If there are no questions after the introduction, read out the bailiff cry. Once you've finished reading out the bailiff cry, know that the round is about to begin, and the first oralist will begin speaking. At this point, you should turn your camera off and start your timer as soon as the first oralist begins to speak. You should set your timer up for the duration of the first oralist's argument time, which you wrote down in your bailiff timesheet. Once there is 10 minutes remaining, turn your camera on and show the 10 card for 5 seconds. Once you've done that, turn your camera off again. Repeat these steps for when there's 5 minutes remaining, for when there's 3 minutes remaining, for when there's 1 minute remaining, and when there's 0 minutes remaining. Once you have held up the 0 card, wait about a minute and then hold up the conclude card. Do not speak. The oralists may continue to conclude until they finish or a judge requests that they finish their argument. Then you will restart the timer for the next oralist. Once all the oralists have spoken once, the rebuttals will begin. check your bailiff timesheet for how much rebuttal time each team has requested. Note that the first team that spoke will begin rebuttal. Once the oralist from the first team begins to speak, start the timer and have your cards ready. Depending on how much rebuttal time they have requested, you may have to start at the 3-minute countdown, 1 minute, and the 0 card, and conclude as before. When all arguments and rebuttals are finished, turn your camera on and say, "The Honorable Court is now adjourned." After the court is adjourned, remind competitors that they will be placed to the waiting room while the judges deliberate on who the best oralist was in the preliminary rounds, or on which best team was in the quarterfinal and semifinal rounds. Include your PACE email in the chat box and kindly ask all participants to fill out the judge evaluation cards and email them to you during their waiting time. At this point, you may admit all of the team competitors into the waiting room.
Hi, bailiffs. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Inga Caldwell, the Associate Director of Environmental Law Programs at PACE Law. I would like to thank your bailiff vice chairs, Alejandra and Madison, for doing such a thorough job with your bailiff training. I'm just picking up the last piece of the training, which involves the judges' deliberations while you have the competitors back in the waiting room. The judges need to deliberate and determine the best oralist in the preliminary rounds and the team to move forward in the quarterfinal and semifinal rounds. The judges also need to complete their scorecards and send them to you at your PACE email address. You should type your email address into the chat box at the beginning of the round and again during the judges' deliberations so that they can easily contact you. Once you have received the judges' scorecards in your email and the chief judge has indicated to you the best oralist for the preliminary rounds or the team to move forward in the quarterfinal and semifinal rounds, please then ask the chief judge whether you may readmit the competitor teams into the main room. Once you receive the okay from the chief judge, please let the competitors back in from the waiting room so that they may receive feedback from the judges. After the judges have provided their feedback and announced the best oralist for the preliminary rounds, you may direct the teams back to the competitors' headquarters if they have any questions. You will then return to the bailiff headquarters Zoom room to check out. You must email the score sheets to nelmcscoresheets@gmail.com and the judge evaluations to nelmecjudgeevals@gmail.com immediately after the round. This is so the grading and scoring committee can start inputting the scores and determine who is moving on to the next round. And finally, if you need to reach out to the bailiff vice chairs, please do so. Their email addresses are included here. Alejandra's email address is amihik@law.pace.edu, and Madison's email address is mroberts4@law.pace.edu. You may also reach out at any point to Lorraine Rubich, myself, or Annie Olson with any questions. And again, the email address for judges' score sheet submission is nelmcscoresheets@gmail.com. The email address for judge evaluations is nelmecjudgeevals@gmail.com. Thank you again for volunteering your time. I think it will be a great competition this year, and I look forward to the day when we can be together in person. Thank you.